Haven't quite got back to where we were, not to mention improve some more. Maybe because of the COE price is very high, that's why it's gone back to 63%. But actually what we're trying to do is to hit at least 70% in a public transport mode share, if not more. And of course, my colleagues in Ministry of Transport have tried very hard to expand the rail network, almost doubling it by 2030, so that 8 in 10 homes are within a 10-minute walk to the MRT station. But in many parts of the world, as Prof. Kishore Mahbubani have said, they have electric vehicle aspirations. We are nowhere near this list of countries that have these aspirations. But Singapore has a differentiated advantage due to our compactness and ability to coordinate policies. I think there's a lot of scope in doing this. And we can encourage green commute. Copenhagen and many of the European cities do this very, very well. Amsterdam and even New York. If New York can do it, why can't we do it? All right. How about art and culture? Something close to Prof. Koh's heart. I thought I must mention this. All right. Of course, we all know London's West End. We have New York, you know, and which are centers of art and culture. We're not bad. I think over the years we've had National Museum. We have the Singapore Night Festival. But of course, if you compare across some of the most great cities of the world, we're not quite there yet, but I think my colleagues have done quite a good job in NAC and National Heritage Board, and we are slowly improving, and I think government is putting in resources. What about heritage? Have we done well? We're looking at the newspapers. There is a lot of angst and people feel disorientated. They want to keep the old, they want to keep the greenery. But actually, this is not a bad sign. I think people do care about these things. But let's not forget we've actually done a lot, all right? There are over 7,000 buildings and structures already conserved and preserved in Singapore, and that's not bad, given a very, very small city-state. And we conserve them not in single buildings, but entire districts, all right? We also protect the marine terrestrial areas. So you have Chek Jawa, if you go to Pulau Semakau, which is where we incinerate all our rubbish, you actually see this. And the place is called the Garbage of Eden, all right? And even in our planning, we're very mindful. I just did the master plan for Bidadari, and if you drive to Mount Vernon, sadly, if you are there for weeks, or if you drive on the road, you see these beautiful heritage trees. We wanted to save it. So how to save it? Because we needed to widen the road for the new town. So we decided that we will pedestrianize the entire road and build a new road. And with this, we incorporate all the heritage trees into a new park. So this is how city planners try to save whatever we can, even if we have to develop a new town. And we need to develop because we need to give all you housing. You are all going to get fiancé schemes and apply to me for a flat. I need to give you a flat. And it's about balancing, right, between development needs and preservation and conservation of heritage and greenery. But the future really depends on what you value. We really have to put our money where our mouth is. If we want to conserve, it's not about saying, can the government conserve, can the government conserve? If you're in the UK, people put money in to help to conserve. Because if you're the landowner, you don't want to conserve. But every one of us sitting out here say, can you please conserve so that I can look at your building? That's not going to work. We have to find a working model for some of these. And it's also about striking a balance when you have a country that is quite constrained in resources, in terms especially of land. You have to balance development with conservation. Now, the GDP we have is very high, right? But unfortunately, so is the Gini coefficient for Singapore, which measures the big gap between the wealthy and the not so wealthy. We are not doing very well. So I think there's been a whole host of policy announced to try to rebalance in terms of looking at jobs, training, wages, how to subsidize the housing and health and education. I won't go into this because you can have other forums discussing this. Now, are we a gracious society? Are we there yet? I think we read a lot of this in the newspapers, all right? And I get a lot of this whenever I want to build studio housing for the elderly. or I want to build a rental block of flats for the very poor, everybody says, don't build it next to me, build it there. And then when I go there, what happens? They tell me the same thing. So where do we put all these? So, and of course, there are a lot of increasing diverse interests amidst competing land users, all right? Where people say, keep Bukit Brown, or keep for the birds, don't build, all right, in Bidadari. I think it's a lot of balancing that we need. Diverse interests. Finally, it's about community hardware. I think Singapore is very good at the hardware, but we need to do a lot more on the hardware. It's a people business, it's not a building business, right? A city is really about people who live in it as a home, not just gleaming buildings that we don't relate to. It's about building relationships, it's about families, it's about friends, it's about love, you know? So I think there's a lot more we need to do. But the good news is that volunteerism is slowly on the rise. People seem to do care about each other. I think that's a really positive sign. So is Singapore worth emulating? And can we be emulated? There are many contextual differences we have to be aware of. We are a city, state, and country all roll into one, and we're very tiny. Unlike many countries which have national governments, federal, state, and then at the provincial levels. We are single-tier government, we make decisions faster, versus multi-tiered governments, which is far more complex. We have political stability, and I think our government has been fiscally and financially prudent. The US government, 17 October, right, is going to debate whether they're going to shut down and or extend more loans to run the government. So going forward, can we sustain our success? I think we will be getting a lot more pluralistic views. We have land constraints, very difficult trade-offs. Our population is aging. There are more views and louder voices. Everybody has an interest. That's why they're called interest groups, because they have a particular interest. But their particular interest might not be other people's interests. So you need to balance all these views. How do we balance these? And the next question is really the social compact between government and the people are evolving. Can we obtain consensus on policies or end up in a state of paralysis? So I think we've done pretty well coming along, but Singapore still faces many challenges ahead, and we need to do a lot more work together as a people to continue to build a very high quality environment and a very endearing home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Koon Hean. That was more than 15 minutes, but you were so good that I didn't want to stop you. The next speaker is a good friend. Koh Teng Chye looks like a kid, but he's not. He's had so many important jobs in Singapore. He was the CEO of PSA, CEO of PUB, CEO URA, and now he runs the Center for Liveable City, trying to save the world. Teng Chye, thank you very much for joining us. And now can you try to outperform Koon Hean?
I told Professor Tommy Koh and Koon Hean that, you know, after Koon Hean speaks, I don't think there's any more I can add to what she has said. And she has done it so eloquently and so comprehensively, I really don't think I've got very much more to say. So some of my slides are repeated, but I do perhaps just add one or two more points. In any case, she has taken some of my time, right? So it's okay, no problem. So let me just start off by perhaps going right back to the very beginning, you know, almost 200 years ago, when this man called Raffles came upon the village here that was in Singapore. Maybe the village had been in existence since the days of Temasek, 14th century, probably just a few thousand people. But this man had the foresight and the vision to see that this place could one day, you know, become a hub, a trading port for Southeast Asia. And he very quickly, you know, took a very visionary, very long-term approach, and he drew up this very famous plan, which, you know, in many ways you look at it, the very structure of Singapore, the roads and so on, some of the roads that he identified, the Padang certainly, what's called open space in this plan, the 1829 Jackson Plan. In fact, you know, to this day, the city bears the the structure that was laid